Hey YNR fans! Waving hand, welcome to YNR Trends, your go-to spot for the juiciest Young and the Restless updates, shocking spoilers, and all the drama you can't stop talking about. From surprise returns to scandalous twists, we break it all down for you, every day. So grab your coffee, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive right into Genoa City's hottest gossip. Family expectations and deep personal betrayal are woven throughout the fabric of Newman Enterprises, a dynasty founded as much on devotion as on ambition and cunning financial sense. At the heart of this never-ending maelstrom is Victor Newman, a giant who has survived innumerable corporate takeovers and personal betrayals but is always at risk from the injuries caused by his own blood. Initiated by Michael Baldwin's shocking betrayal on behalf of Victor's son, Adam, the current crisis is more than just another power struggle in the competitive world of Genoa City business. It is a profound and complex disaster that goes right to the core of Victor's identity as a CEO, a patriarch, and a man who feels his legacy should command unwavering loyalty. Because it comes from the innermost circle of trusted confidants rather than from a known enemy or rival family, this specific betrayal strikes a special and painful chord, taking advantage of the long-standing and unstable divisions within the Newman family. As the ultimate fixer and legal genius, Michael Baldwin has long played a crucial part in Genoa City's power structure. His keen intellect and unbreakable ethical compass, which he earned via his own redemption story, made him an essential tool. His devotion to Victor was built on respect for one another and a shared experience of overcoming existential dangers. It was never that of a sycophant or a simple worker. Michael was a source of stability for Victor, a man who hardly ever trusted anyone. He was the person you contacted when you needed a difficult, high-stakes issue resolved within the strict parameters of the law while still winning by a landslide, not when you wanted something immoral buried. This trust was unwavering. Thus, Michael's choice to covertly support Adam and attempt to overthrow Victor's authority over Newman Enterprises is a betrayal that goes beyond the usual corporate backstabbing. For Victor, it represents a disastrous breakdown in his own judgment and a basic breach of a sacred trust. Why did Adam do this, is not the only question that will haunt him. More agonizingly, though, why did Michael? This turns the issue from a straightforward family argument into a more profound and disturbing incident that challenges Victor's entire control structure and the devotion it fosters. Adam Newman, the catalyst for this calamity, is both its root cause and its most intricate component. Adam and his father have a never-ending cycle of wanting to be accepted, feeling rejected, getting even, and then temporarily getting back together. His acts are driven by a passionate, frequently catastrophic impulse to establish his value and persuade his father to view him as an equal, if not a superior, rather than just money or power. Adam has shown a terrifying degree of strategic acumen in planning this scheme with Michael as his weapon. He pinpointed the one ally Victor would never suspect, the one whose betrayal would be the most disheartening, and skillfully took advantage of that blind spot. The core of Victor's operational security is the target of this precision strike, not a blunt force assault. Adam is driven by a poisonous combination of his bitterness toward his father's current power structure, which he believes consistently keeps him out of despite his abilities, and his long-standing rivalry with his half-brother, Victor Nick Newman Jr., whose place in the family and business Adam both envies and despises. By employing Michael, Adam is not only seeking to take over, but also to completely destroy his father's society, demonstrating that Victor's most reliable systems are brittle and that he, the apparent outsider, is cunning enough to use Victor's own resources against him. Within Newman Enterprises, the consequences of this betrayal cause an urgent and serious problem. Victor, who takes great satisfaction in his omniscience and control, has been taken entirely by surprise. Subterfuge has been used to get beyond the precise safeguards he put in place to stop such an uprising: tiers of management, loyalists in important positions, and a culture of respect and fear. The board of directors will be thrown into disarray since it is never a completely solid institution when confronted with Newman family drama. Because they smell blood in the water and are afraid of the volatility that always precedes a Newman civil war, shareholders will become uneasy. Competing companies, especially the tenacious Jabot Industries under Jack Abbott, will look for an opportunity to take advantage of a moment of vulnerability. As a veteran of decades of combat with Victor, Jack will surely observe with a mixture of strategic interest and schadenfreude, ready to seize any chance to gain an advantage while his oldest adversary is preoccupied with internal strife. The market position and stability of the entire company Victor spent his life developing are at risk due to the genuine and present corporate crisis. But for Victor, the corporate menace is only the outward sign of a much more serious and intimate issue. His ego and his status as the all-powerful patriarch are severely damaged by this incident. Victor Newman has always had both financial and psychological strength. He uses a mix of kindness, intimidation, and an almost legendary air of invincibility to engender loyalty. That aura is destroyed by Michael's betrayal, which was carried out at Adam's request. It demonstrates that Victor can be outwitted, that his moral judgment is not always accurate, and that the respect he demands is not unqualified. These insights are existential for a man Victor's age and size. They make him face the brittleness of his legacy and his own mortality. The fight ahead is for the Newman family's story itself, not simply for the CEO's seat. In addition to preserving his business, Victor needs to reinforce his own identity by asserting his power. His reaction will probably be brutal as usual, but it might also contain a rare and sincere anguish that comes from the betrayal's personal aspect. He will have to face the son he has never quite comprehended or acknowledged, and in doing so, he might have to face his own part in producing Adam's resentful and monstrously intelligent enemy. The effects ripple across the whole Newman family and their associates, extending well beyond Victor and Adam. Nick Newman, who frequently finds himself torn between his brother's mayhem and his father's will be put in a situation that is both familiar and unsettling. He could feel obligated to stand up for his father, to be the good son, and to help keep the business stable, but doing so will unavoidably put him in direct and painful conflict with Adam, resurrecting past scars and continuing the cycle of enmity between brothers. A crucial test of Victoria Newman's leadership will be faced by the present CEO, who is a powerful figure in her own right. This coup attempt directly threatens her position, therefore she will need to respond with strength and strategy. Will she recognize an opportunity to establish her own power free from her father's shadow, or will she firmly ally herself with Victor? Nate Hastings, Victoria's husband and Michael's own brother-in-law, is likewise put in a difficult situation by the treachery, possibly having to decide between his desire to further his business and his familial ties. But Michael Baldwin's own personal struggle is the most heartbreaking and intricate. His behavior is a clear departure from the person he has spent decades molding into. His entire redemption tale could be ruined by this betrayal, which would turn him back into the dishonest manipulator of his childhood when he was a respected court officer and family man. The internal strife will be enormous. What made him act in this way? Did Adam make a strong case, citing a feeling of justice or a secret grievance? Was it a threat to his family or a promise of power? Perhaps, if his techniques were flawed, he recognized an opportunity to radically alter the destructive dynamics of the Newman Empire during a moment of weakness. He now has to deal with the fallout from his actions, which include the complete breakdown of Victor's trust, the deep disappointment and rage of his wife, Christine Williams, who represents the legal integrity he has strived for, and the possible destruction of his career and professional reputation. This betrayal will weigh heavily on him, and he will have to deal with his guilt, defend his actions to both himself and others, and deal with the harsh and inevitable retaliation from Victor Newman, who is notorious for taking full revenge on anyone who crosses him. Because it is so complex, the dilemma surrounding Michael's betrayal ultimately causes a seismic upheaval in Genoa City. It is both a Shakespearean family tragedy, a corporate thriller, and an in-depth character analysis. It calls into question the fundamental ties that have long supported the Newman Empire. Victor has a dangerous future ahead of him. He has two battles to fight, the exterior one to protect his business from a hostile takeover planned by his son, and the internal one to come to terms with the betrayal of a close friend and comprehend the systemic corruption in his own family that made it possible. The next phase of his life and legacy will be determined by his response. Will he react with the unrestrained rage of the Black Knight, burning the ground and destroying everything in his path to win, or will the specific betrayal, so intimate and so deftly carried out, cause a rare moment of reflection? Perhaps he will see the dark shadow of his own younger self in Adam's ruthless genius and the fallout from a lifetime of requiring loyalty via power and fear rather than earning it with respect and love in Michael's treachery. Whatever the result, Newman Enterprises' universe has been irrevocably changed. The executive suite's once impenetrable walls have been exposed as being paper-thin and susceptible to the knives of those closest to the throne, and trust is now more scarce than ever. The fallout from this betrayal will not be a straightforward restart, rather, it will be a rebalancing of power, loyalty, and family dynamics that will reverberate for years to come, demonstrating that the most dangerous threats in Genoa City never originate from rival businesses but rather from the tainted well of betrayal and familial love. Even though Newman Enterprises had survived previous hurricanes, this time there was a distinct weight to the silence in Victor Newman's office. Betrayal reverberated through the walls, which were normally alive with strategy, power struggles, and acerbic arguments. Once one of Victor's closest confidants and allies, Michael Baldwin had committed the unimaginable. In addition to surprising Victor, his actions had shattered the core of Newman loyalty. Because it came from a man Victor had let into his inner circle, a man he repeatedly backed when others doubted his loyalty, the betrayal was more profound than any business dispute or market meltdown. This was a personal matter as much as a commercial one. With his tumbler of bourbon still in his hand, Victor sat behind his enormous desk. His gaze was focused on the skyline of the city, but his thoughts were reliving the sequence of events that brought him to this point. Michael had always been cunning, a man who could influence a jury, control a courtroom, and distort the facts to shield people he loved. That was the reason he was such a useful ally. However, Michael eventually made a decision that put Newman Enterprises at risk and weakened Victor. The treachery was not the result of a thoughtless error or poor judgment. It was intentional. Victor found it most difficult to accept that. Michael had sunk a knife right into the center of Newman power by aligning himself with the adversary. Always the one to calm Victor's anger, Nikki Newman stood close by, her hands clenched together as she attempted to comprehend the implications for their family. "We've been through worse," she replied quietly, her voice shaking. "Victor. We'll overcome this as well." However, even she was aware that the wound was different this time. Victor was enraged not only by Michael's treachery but also by the weakness it revealed. A man like Victor, who based his empire on respect, power, and domination, would find it difficult to forgive someone so close to him for deceiving him. He had a quiet vow that someone would pay dearly, and Nikki could see the fire in his eyes. Michael, meantime, was sitting at his own office across town, his nerves ruffled and his tie unfastened. He had persuaded himself that he had made the correct decision by opposing Victor. He reminded himself that it wasn't about ambition or greed, but rather about defending someone he loved. However, he knew in his heart that he had gone too far and that there was no turning back. Victor's anger hung over him like a shadow from which he was unable to move. Michael had been balancing loyalty and self-interest for decades, but this time he questioned whether he had finally crossed the line. Even when he was by himself, he could practically feel Victor breathing down his neck. He knew Victor Newman would never forgive, forget, or allow treachery to go unpunished, so there was no solace in justifying his behavior. The ripple effects started with Newman Towers. Victoria Newman let out her irritation as she paced her office, her shoes clicking on the shiny floor. How was this possible for him? Nick had been attempting to soothe her when she snapped, raging at him. "For years, Michael Baldwin has sat at our table." Her voice trembled with rage. "He's been privy to strategy, legal battles, and confidential deals, and now, he's handed it all over to our enemies. He didn't simply turn on Dad. We were all betrayed by him. Everything may be ruined by this." Nick, who was always the mediator, attempted to calm things down. He told her that we must not panic. "It is a blow, really. However, Michael is aware of Dad's abilities." Nick's remarks had weight, but his own uneasiness was evident from the tightness in his jaw. He must be aware of what's about to happen. In a sense, Michael had become family rather than just a coworker. He was as hurt by the betrayal, although he was less inclined to express it than Victoria. Adam Newman was sitting back in his chair somewhere else, processing the news with a slight smirk tugging at his lips. Adam, in contrast to his siblings, was curious rather than saddened. Adam was aware that flaws had a way of spreading, and Michael's treachery was a crack in Victor's otherwise unbreakable empire. He wouldn't deny that he kind of liked watching Victor rush to clean up a mess for once, even though he didn't actually want Newman Enterprises to fail. Adam sipped his drink and whispered to himself, so, the great Victor Newman finally got played. He enjoyed the change in power dynamics on the inside but knew better than to brag too publicly. Maybe, just maybe, this was the time he could take advantage of. Rivals were circling like vultures as the problem rapidly developed. Rivals of Newman Enterprises quickly took advantage of the confusion, stoking rumors of instability, casting doubt on Victor's capacity to maintain control of his empire, and sowing uncertainty in the minds of investors. Board members, whose allegiance was waning as they contemplated the potential consequences of Michael's treachery, sought urgent meetings. For the first time in years, Newman Enterprises appeared weak in a world where perception was crucial. Victor was aware of this, which only strengthened his resolve to take action. He refused to be defeated by anyone, including Michael Baldwin. At home, Nikki made another attempt to calm her husband down and try to soften the edges of his anger before it overcame him. Sitting opposite from him in the darkened living room, she begged, "Victor, you must not allow this to ruin you. Yes, we will fight back, but you cannot allow Michael to change who you are." Victor turned to face her, his gaze unblinking and icy. In that deep, purposeful voice that made everyone pay attention, he declared, "My darling, I am exactly who I need to be." Michael made up his mind. Nikki shuddered at the way he stated, "Now he will live with the consequences." She was aware that nothing, not even love or family, could change Victor's thoughts once he made up his mind to get revenge. She was afraid of what that would imply for Michael, and maybe for them all. Lauren Fenmore, Michael's wife, found herself in the midst of the chaos. She had always been her husband's strongest ally, supporting him during his most trying times. She wasn't sure she could defend him this time, though. Her heart fell when she learned of his betrayal of Victor. She was the only one who truly recognized Victor's potential and the cost of betraying him. Late one evening, she confronted Michael and demanded explanations. "Why would you act in this way?" With tears in her eyes, she inquired. "You were aware of its implications. You were aware that Victor would pursue you." Michael, feeling worn out and troubled, attempted to clarify. "Lauren, I had no other option. You're not understanding. It was about keeping us safe, not about him. Defending you." Lauren, however, shook her head in despair. "Are you blind? You've increased our risk. You have set us up as targets." In order to put up a united front for the world, the Newman family closed ranks as the days passed. Despite their differences, Victoria, Nick, and even Adam were pulled into the same orbit. Despite their disagreements and battles, they ultimately understood that cooperation was essential to their existence. For once, a bigger threat eclipsed their rivalry. Newman Enterprises might burn to the ground if they don't put out the fire that Michael Baldwin started. Victor didn't take long to come up with his counterattack. In order to find secrets, flaws, and vulnerabilities, he had his investigators comb through every aspect of Michael's existence. In addition to seeking retribution, he intended to destroy Michael completely until nothing remained of the man who had dared to offend him. Victor murmured to himself as he went over the reports, "He thinks he's clever. However, nobody can outsmart me. Nobody." His unwavering resolve was terrifying in its ferocity, serving as a reminder of why Victor Newman was still a titan in Genoa City. He was battling not just for his business but also for his family's future, his legacy, and his pride.